Good morning. The June 14th, 2022 meeting of the Charter Authorizing Panel is called to order. I'd like to welcome you all to the ADE auditorium and ask that you please silence all of your devices. Today we have the special pleasure of welcoming a new charter member to our team, Mr. Mark Zellner. Welcome.
Thank you.
We look forward to
Recording in progress.
We look forward to serving with you. Do you want to just briefly tell a little bit about yourself so our members?
Sure. I am Mark Zellner. I work at Southwest Power Pool here in Little Rock as the lead cybersecurity supply chain analyst. Previously, in a previous life, I served on the other side as a board member of an Arkansas charter. So I've seen it from that side, and I know the preparation that was needed in order to come before this panel, and I appreciate the thoroughness of the panel and the panel members during those interactions, and I look forward to continuing to help with the integrity of the process and make sure that we serve the state and our students as well as we can.
Thank you so much. Mr. Baldwin and Mr. Davis are joining us virtually today. Ms. Sonia Wright McMurray is here in the office auditorium with us. So with that, let's get started and look at our agenda. Panel members, on our consent agenda today, we have our minutes from May 12th. And then we have two items that are kind of cleanup items, and you've never seen these on consent agenda before, but we felt like we needed to put these on there for the official record. And that is Osceola STEM Academy is rescinding their charter. That's their choice. But when you rescind the charter, you rescind all of the waivers that went with that charter. And then Blytheville High School and New Tech also requested to rescind their charter, and therefore they would be giving up their waivers. And the reason we've never had those before is because we've never had that situation where charters rescinded by their own admission to do that, and so we just needed to put that somewhere in the public record. Any questions? If not, I'll accept a motion.
I make a motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
So I have a motion by Mr. Baldwin and a second by Dr. Wright McMurray to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. Okay. Yes. I vote to pass. Okay. I vote yay. Now we have a motion passed. All right, thank you. All right, action agenda. And the first item, Ms. Summons, if you will come up.
Good morning. DESE Charter Office. Consideration of Arkansas Military and First Responders Academy Amendment Request. The Arkansas Military and First Responders Academy is requesting to change the opening date from August 2022 to August 2023. We have representatives from that charter. Dr. Don Hall, who's the superintendent. Dr. Michael Bacallis, who's the CEO of AQS. And also Mr. Paul Vallis from Arkansas Military. He's the CEO. And they are on, Dr. Hall is on at this time.
Thank you. Dr. Hall? And
yes, ma'am.
If you have any of your other members that are with you, if you will raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you. And do we have any opposition to this?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Dr. Hall, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Again, it's good to be in front of you all, and we are very excited to still be a part of this process. What's the biggest change for us, I guess, is for me. I now live in Little Rock and have for the past several months. As I shared with the panel when we originally came to you, I would be relocating here, and I have done that. And the reason we're before you today, though, as we started going through the planning process, it became very apparent and very quickly that as we were doing due diligence on one potential site, that as we started that around January, that there was no way we were going to be able to open in August of 2022 because of the number of life safety issues on the site we were going to be working on and so forth because of supply constraints. We were working with the state. We were also working with our construction management firm. We were working with APSRC. We were working with a number of different organizations. And the back order log for like even fire rated safety doors was significant. And we found that with ordering furniture for the classrooms, technology for the classrooms. And we just felt like rather than risk opening poorly, we wanted to go ahead and say, let's move it back a year to August of 2023, and to make sure that we weren't going to put the students' opening day experience at risk. And that's really the primary reason we're here today. We are currently working with the Walton Foundation KLS group, which is a construction management arm for them, and the Walton Personal Philanthropy group, as they're working together to help us with site selection and finalizing where we could go. So over the next 14 months, they're going to be helping us with that process, so that not only will they help us find an appropriate site, but they're going to help us with the construction management arm. They have obviously a very deep bench of resources available to them that we wouldn't have if we go out to the standard open market. And that we felt much more comfortable with that than going out and what we had been able to do on our own. So I have a presentation prepared, but it's really the same presentation I gave when we appeared to you all a year ago. So the model hasn't changed, the budget hasn't changed, the governance really isn't much different. And I'm willing to go through that if you want. I'm also willing to answer any questions, but the bottom line is this is really about the fact that any construction improvement and facility improvement and being able to equip the school in a 4 to 5 month time period was not practical, given the fact we honestly could not get the resources. And both our local building and engineering firm, as well as our national construction management firm, both told us over and over, it's just not feasible. You cannot get the equipment in this time frame. So I will leave it up to the panel what else you want me to do, but that's really what it boils down to today.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. Just for clarification, by delaying your start, then in 23-24, you had originally planned to have 9th through 10th. Are you planning to shift your progressive cap exactly as you had presented, where you will have 9th graders only starting next year with a cap of 200 and then build that up?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Our intent is to shift the entire model out 1 year. So in 23-24, we would open with 200 9th graders, and then each year we would continue with the original model. So in the 5-year model, in the 5th year, we would have had, in the 4th year, we would have had the 800 9 through 12, and the 5th year, 800 9 through 12. Now in the 5th year is the first year we would be 9 through 12. So it just basically pushes everything back 1 year, but it doesn't change the total cap. It doesn't change the grade level.
And also, Dr. Hall, it doesn't change the expiration date on the charter.
That is correct.
Okay.
That's why, again, the entirety of the model, the entirety of the cap, the entirety of the grade level, and the entirety of the budget, everything was intact. It was, again, this is really just a response to the market conditions.
I understand. Mr. Davis, any questions?
No questions from me.
Mr. Baldwin?
Yes, I think this is a prudent option that you're taking on here, and it does sound like you're working with some good organizations with APSRC and the Walton team. The only question I have really is as it relates to your budget. So, not only is there supply chain challenges in just getting stuff, there's also some serious price changes in the cost of things. And honestly, it's some of it is going up and some of it's coming down. I saw recently that the price of wood is now half what it was last year. It's a challenging time to build something. Are you all going to update your budget, and how will those cost changes affect your budget? And maybe you've done that already. So just really a budget question.
Right. The budget we resubmitted, that we submitted this time, is an updated budget to try to take into account those adjusted costs. So we did go back in and look at those. So we have worked with the Walton Foundation on that to look at what kinds of costs would be in there. A lot of the capital costs, though, would be part of a construction budget so it helps absorb some of those costs up. It increases as well as decreases. So it's a little bit different. A lot of your operational costs, those go up. So we did adjust for that. The other thing you'll notice in the budget that we actually do have an actual grant that we've already received. So that's money that's in there rather than anticipated. So that's money we actually have in the budget at this point.
Okay. And you all are not incurring any debt, so the Federal Reserve's increase in interest rates doesn't affect you?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Dr. Wright McMurray?
Thank you again for being very thoughtful and wanting to make sure that students have a good start and a good experience, and you guys get it right. So I do appreciate that. One question I did have is just for a point of clarification. In your opening comments, you mentioned that the governance is going to be pretty much the same. So do you anticipate there will be any changes to what you originally submitted, or is it going to be exactly the same structure that you guys came to us before with?
The governance internally is all exactly the same. The only change that we see coming down the road, whereas AMPRA is a part of AQS and we're using their 501c3 status, our intent is that after the first year, we have formed another entity called AMPRA Inc., and we are having it file for its own 501c3 status so that it can be an independent entity, and that wouldn't require then a city to be associated with AQS, and it can operate as an independent Arkansas entity. And that's really, again, designed to make sure that this is an Arkansas entity independent of any kind of external entity. But we know it'll take about 6 to 8 months to receive, potentially up to 9 months, based on what we've been told so far, to receive that 501c3 status. And so once that occurs, then the AQS, which is the organization out of Illinois, would no longer be associated with AMPRA. So it would be a standalone Arkansas entity. That's the only change. But again, it's more of a behind the scenes kind of thing. And it is designed to allow us to operate as an independent entity in Arkansas.
Thank you for that clarification.
No problem.
Mr. Zellner?
So Dr. Hall, really in parallel with Mr. Baldwin's question, one of the things I heard you say is you're still working on site selection. So I'd like to understand what your confidence level that the amount of time you're asking for is going to be sufficient. And, where I'm coming from is if you don't have a site selected yet, you know, are you sure of the materials you're going to need, and then you know the runway that's going to be required for those to come in and be utilized?
Basically, at this point, working with KLS, the Walton Group, they've told us that we need at least 9 months in order to have any kind of practical timeline for being able to do life safety. And that's the primary thing we're considering, the life safety improvements for any kind of capital improvements in the building. So we're looking right now that we've got about 15 months. So we've got 6 months to secure a site that we feel is appropriate. We had a site, and we're looking at still trying to figure out the financing around one site, but we haven't finalized that one. So we haven't let go of it yet, but we are working around the financing of that one potential site. But KLS, again, the Walton arm, is helping us look at some other potential sites. So we hope to have that in just the next 3 to 4 months, but we've got about 6 months in order working with them. And again, by using their resources, we feel much more confident about being able to narrow in on a site within that time frame. And then they have built that latter part for the construction management. Again, using their resource pool, we feel much more confident about that. We weren't able to engage them until March of this year. So once we were able to do that, it really significantly changed the trajectory of our entire project.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Hall, you had previously submitted an LEA request to start the new school, and can we consider this your official decline of that request?
That is correct.
All right.
And
Michelle,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
and Michelle may need to send you an email to get you to confirm that, just so we will have it in writing. But then once the school is ready to open, you know, we will go back through that procedure with you to get your LEA number once you're up and ready to start.
Right. We have contacted the State Department in DESE and told them this already, so they have that information.
Okay. And then once your 501(c) status is adjusted and changed, then we'll need that communication as well to go into your file.
Correct. Correct.
Ms. James, any other concerns? All right. Any other from any panel member? All right. With that, get back to my home page, and I'll accept a motion.
I move that we approve the request to change the start date to the fall of 2023.
Second.
I have a motion by Dr. Sonia Wright McMurray and a second by Mr. Zellner to approve the amendment request as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hall. We appreciate everything that you're doing, and we appreciate a careful approach so that we have a successful start. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you to the panel. Again, we are very excited about the process, and we enjoy working on it with you.
Thank you. All right, item number 2, Ms. Summons.
The second item is consideration of IDEA Public Schools Arkansas Amendment Request. IDEA Public School Arkansas is requesting to change the opening date from 2023 to 2024. And we have Mr. Daniel Fishman, who's representing IDEA Public Schools.
Mr. Fishman, if you will raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Fishman,
Yes, ma'am.
any presentation? You want to kind of go over what you're needing?
Yes, ma'am. And I appreciate the time, panel members. It's good to see you all again. My name is Dan Fishman. I am with Idea Public Schools. I'm our Senior Vice President for Growth. So I lead our growth into new regions, and that includes Arkansas. We're before you today to ask for a 1-year delay in the start and a 1-year delay in the expiration of our charter to 2024. We're doing so for some of the same reasons you just heard from Dr. Hall. IDEA has a very tried and true model we've used to launch successfully in over 10 regions. And to do that, we need to have facilities lined up by a certain time, and we need to have an executive director lined up by a certain time. And both of those have proven more challenging than in any of our previous launch efforts. So we do not have an executive director to lead the region as of yet. And we also have only one of our 2 sites identified and there for us. We're in the process of appraising a set of sites that could be our second site, but we just don't have enough time to get an executive director trained in the IDEA model and ready to launch IDEA schools at the bar that we insist on. And we won't have the 2 school sites secured and our facilities ready in time to launch in fall of 23. So we're requesting a 1-year delay to 24 so that we can have that leadership in place and therefore have our principals ready to launch those schools on day 1, and also have school sites in the locations that we put before you previously, ideally in in Little Rock and in North Little Rock, to serve the population we've committed to serve. And we do feel that with this delay, we can work towards that.
Mr. Fishman, in your 1-year delay in start, then that will just shift over your start for K1 and 2 and 6th grade?
Yes, ma'am. To be clear, nothing else in our program would change. So we still would launch K1, 2, 6. We still would launch K1, 2, 6 on 2 separate campuses. And everything else in our application remains constant. There was an excellent question by one of the panel members about how budgets are impacted by this. We built a fairly conservative facilities assumption at the time. We do need to revisit it. However, I think it's pretty close to where we will be, given the costs that we've seen for some of the other facilities that we're working on around the area. So we resubmitted the application in whole and did not make numerous changes because very little of what we're doing is changing other than the start date.
I think the other thing that we'll need to revisit once you've nailed down your 2 facilities is the actual, once you have your facilities and know what your space allows for, then to come back and have the conversation about what the building caps will be. So your charter cap is 1,000 seats for that first year of K1, 2, and 6. So I'm assuming you're putting K2 in one building and 6th grade in your second campus, and we'll need to have building caps so that you can advertise appropriately.
So we'll actually launch Sherwin Kaufman with K1, 2, and 6 on one campus. So on each of those campuses, you'll see K1, 2, 6, and we call that our phase 1 build. So for 2 years, we'll have 6 and then K1, 2, 3, 6, 7 on one campus. We'll add a phase 2 to that campus. And the following year, the 3rd year, you have K1, 2, 3, 4, and on a separate building, 6, 7, 8. So you'll see that on both campuses.
So will you actually, in the end, have 4 buildings? Is that what you're saying to me? 2 at each side?
They're connected. We speak of it as though they're separate buildings. They're connected. So it's physically one plant, but we talk about it as an academy and a college prep, and we don't build it all at once as a cost-saving measure.
So that's something that we'll need to bring back to the panel and put all out there, because in accountability,
Okay.
It makes a big difference. So we'll need to be very clear about campuses, buildings, LEA numbers, how many principals are required, all of those kind of state accountability and federal accountability. So once you've secured your campuses, then we'll probably need to come back and just put that conversation on the record.
Yes, ma'am. We will do that.
All right. Mr. Davis, would you like to start our questions?
Sure, and thank you for being so very, very thoughtful about this. And sort of following up, talk to me a little bit about, obviously I know that there are issues in regards to the necessary cost and materials and those. You sort of mentioned this idea of capacity and finding the right leader. Can you talk just a little bit more about that? Or can you go into detail about that? What's your process? And give us a better understanding of, as you've gone out and tried to locate that person, where are you having some challenges around that?
Sure, and it's good to see you, Mr. Davis. IDEA typically hires executive directors 2.5 years, sometimes 3 years before the launch of a region. And we do that because they're responsible for hiring the founding principals who launched their school and helping to train those principals. They're responsible for building community support for the work we're doing. They're responsible for recruiting students into those schools. And of course, they have a team around them for all of this, but they have quite a few responsibilities that they own. And we also consider it very important that they do all this within the IDEA model. So the reason we're excited to come to Arkansas, and I believe the reason some of the CAP members and others are excited to have us, is we do have a model we've spent now 22 years honing that's proven successful. It's important we hire this executive director far enough out that they can spend lots of time in our schools and with our best leaders learning this. Conversely, we could hire an internal leader, which we sometimes do, who would move to Arkansas. They would learn Arkansas, but they would know IDEA. So we're open to both. However, we act on the timeline as though we're going to have to hire an external leader because we need more time. We want to be conservative in doing so. So we need that time to make sure they can spend 6 to 8 months at least really embedded in our schools and our regions, learning the work before they have to move to Arkansas 24 months out and begin some of that other work that we just talked about. So we typically do a national dragnet. We've looked at candidates from as far as Connecticut and Southern California. We've looked at candidates from Arkansas, from Florida, from Texas. So we've conducted a number of interviews. We've taken folks out to Arkansas to get them excited about the work. But it's just been a very, very tough year to hire leaders. And it's not just in Arkansas where we're seeing this. So we've never asked for a delay like this before, and we do it as a last resort, but we have not been able to find the leader we need, and we need to buy ourselves some time to find that leader.
Yeah, I really appreciate you raising up and highlighting the importance of a leader. Can you give me, and I'm assuming that this process is based upon either what you've seen in the broader field around leaders coming in with a shorter timeline, or what you might have experienced doing it a different way. By shortcutting that process, can you tell me what are some of the dangers that you could potentially encounter? I think this is an interesting learning opportunity when we start talking about identifying leadership for public charters in the state of Arkansas. Your model, once again, is a 3-year model out kind of approach. And I'm wondering, what have you found if that was circumvented, if you attempted to do that with only a year? Outside of just learning your model, what are some of the other challenges that you think a leader could potentially face?
Yes, sir. We have done this shorter timeline, and our schools open. The culture is not IDEA culture, and the results don't tend to be at the bar of the sort of IDEA bar that we set. So what we find is leaders, and this is totally understandable, they will default to whatever they learned and however they learned to run a school if they don't have the time to understand how we do it at IDEA. And that means it may not necessarily be a bad thing if they were a very successful school leader and manager of principals before they came to IDEA. But it means what you're getting isn't something that IDEA knows how to quickly fix when things are not working. And all the resources we can typically throw at schools to help them improve when they need help that really doesn't work when we have a leader who's come in on a very short timeline. What they're doing doesn't look anything like IDEA. So we do this because we've learned the hard way that if we try to do this quickly and keep our promise around timing rather than quality, we usually end up sacrificing quality, because what you get is not, in fact, IDEA. It's whatever that particular leader went through, and they will build around that.
Thanks for that. No more questions.
Mr. Baldwin?
Yeah, thank you. So a little bit of a question like Mr. Davis had. I think it's interesting to talk about leadership, but also talk about teacher staffing. And one of the things you read about a lot now is the challenge of hiring teachers, nurses, basically all types of professional positions. And I guess I'm asking that not necessarily from the Arkansas perspective, but as you all are staffing your schools out across the nation, what are you finding right now as far as staffing high quality teachers? Is that a challenge, or is that something you got under control? And do you expect to see that same challenge in Arkansas once you jump into us?
Yes, sir. It's a good question, Mr. Baldwin. I'll do my best to answer it. The first part I feel more comfortable answering. IDEA sets a goal of retaining at least 85% of its teachers. And in a number of the previous years, we've hit that. And that may not sound like a particularly high number to you, but that actually is quite high in the high performing charter sector. And we've been able to do that because we believe we treat teachers differently, and the incentives, the salaries, the retention, everything is aligned to keep great teachers and to keep them in the classrooms. They feel like they can progress without going into administration. This year, it's very unlikely we'll hit that number. So it has been a much tougher year to retain our teachers, and it's unlikely we're going to hit our goal, which in the past we've usually been very close to or have hit it around this time. So yes, it's been harder for us this year. In terms of how that would impact us in Arkansas, pushing this out to 24-25, it's hard to say. I don't know if the teaching profession will have stabilized. I don't know if folks will feel less comfortable jumping into other professions or different schools, and they'll want the stability of committing to an organization like IDEA. I hope that's the case, but I think I'd be making a promise I don't know if I can keep if I told you that's the case.
Thanks for that answer. I think that's an honest answer. It's hard to know what the future holds with this.
I sure hope so. It is not easy to keep the culture of a school going and to build on results when it's new staff every year.
Dr. Wright McMurray?
Just thank you for being thoughtful and intentional in the implementation of your charter school here in the state, and I don't have any additional questions.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Zellner?
Mr. Fishman, thanks for the information, and thanks for your measured approach. I don't have any questions.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Fishman, I don't have any questions either. I just want to clarify that the charter office will be reaching out to you to make sure that we've put together a really good document explaining your buildings and what LEAs you will be applying for next year, so that we've gone through some of the accountability issues with you, so you'll be aware of all of those.
Yes, ma'am. And we'll make sure that it's crystal clear. We don't want this to be ambiguous either, because the surprises are not good for either of us. So we'll make sure that this is spelled out very clearly and you feel satisfied with what's in front of you.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. All right. Unless there are
Thank you.
other questions, back to my voting sheet. I'll accept a motion regarding IDEA Public School amendment request.
I move that we approve the amendment request as submitted.
I second that.
I have a motion by Dr. Wright McMurray and a second by Mr. Davis to approve the amendment request as discussed. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Congratulations, Mr. Fishman. And of course, you know, your expiration date on the charter remains the same, but we do appreciate a healthy decision about starting so that you're successful. So we really appreciate that.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, charter panel members, we have a work session scheduled for our next meeting in July. We may have a couple of items on the agenda. Looks like we may have a charter coming up with a renewal of a digital learning plan. You know, we move through those very quickly. They go through a very long review process, a very thorough review process here at the department. But Ms. Summons, I know that you've been working on a list of items that people are suggesting for things that we'd like to discuss during our work session. The work session will be here in the auditorium, and we will record it. It still is a public meeting. But if there are any questions, anything that you want to bring up at that time, it'll just be an open conversation. But if there's in particular, hey, Dory, I want you to really go over this particular part of the process. And we have some panel members that have been through the entire process of seeing new applications and working through all of those components. But then there are many of us that have seen a lot of amendments. What are those kind of things? We also have a new charter team that is working, and so they are eager to learn. And I think it's an opportunity to look at the documents that are presented to you on the agenda and to look back at previous agendas and say, what really worked? What do I wish I had? Those kind of conversations. And so I think Ms. Summons is kind of planning probably just a morning, like 9 to 12 kind of plan. And if we need further ones, we certainly will. I'm going to be meeting with APSRC soon, and we're going to be talking about authorizer training. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. Don't feel bad about letting Dory know if you want to talk about something or just bringing it up next month when we meet. But we will try to meet in person so that we can engage in that kind of conversation. Any questions or other comments from panel members? Well, Mr. Zillner, it was a pretty easy first day.
Thanks for keeping the training wheels on.
All right. I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. I have received a motion from Dr. Wright McMurray and a second from Mr. Zillner to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.